This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day. And that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
Hello and welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast with me, Rich Ferraro, and welcome to a brand new show in our arsenal. This is called Friday Top 5, in which we discuss the big news stories which are Forest or Forest adjacent that have come out this week. And in a second, I'm going to be joined by Tom and George to dig our thoughts out and stick our oar in to find out what we really think about the latest news. However, one of the things that we need to do is find out where the news is. And so with that in mind, I'm happy to say that we have got a new contributor to the podcast. And so let's head over and find out what the latest news is from our newest contributor, Jamie.
Hi, this is Jamie Martin with your top 5 Forest stories from the 1865 news desk. Starting off this week's news for Nottingham Forest, the manager, Steve Cooper, has been given more time following the club's draw with Wolves last weekend. The club drew 1-1 with Wolves last Saturday, a game which many expected to be Steve Cooper's final game in a dugout as Forest manager. The Forest ownership is said to have given Steve Cooper more time to turn around bad form. With just one win in 10 games and a tough run of fixtures coming soon, the pressure still remains despite this small glimmer of hope for the Welsh manager. Forest need points and soon, with Cooper hoping his last-ditch efforts can see this Forest side get points on the board and stop the rot. In other news, Nottingham Forest owner resigns from his position as Greek Super League chairman. Nottingham Forest and Olympiakos owner, Evangelos Marinakis, has officially resigned from his post at the Greek Super League, serving as the chairman of the league since June 2022. Following a series of violent incidents across numerous fixtures in the league, all top-flight matches in the Greek Super League will now be played behind closed doors until February 2024. In his letter following the resignation, Mr Marinakis seemed frustrated with other board members involved with the league. He wrote, "The words of certain board members are not consistent with their actions. I've neither the time nor the desire to continue to be involved in the management of the league." A meeting between board members was scheduled for the 12th of December 2023 to discuss recent issues in Greek football. However, the meeting did not take place following the resignation of Evangelos Marinakis. Harry Toffolo has also been singing high praise for his gaffer Steve Cooper following a tough run of form. Now, it's been a tough watch for the last couple of months for Nottingham Forest fans. Nottingham Forest form seemingly rock bottom. Despite this, an in-form Harry Toffolo continues to prove his worth with many excellent performances and a superb goal against Wolves at the weekend, his first in the Garibaldi Red. Now, Toffolo's rank in the Forest squad was once forgotten, but he's now a major player in Cooper's side and has put his faith in the coach who brought him to the club, as mentioned in his interview with the BBC this week. In that interview, he said, "The love and support we've got for the manager, you can see it in abundance out there. You can see how together the group is, how much everyone wants to play for the manager." Toffolo's praise was later echoed by Cheikh Kouyate also this week, as he spoke with Sky Sports, again praising the under-pressure Forest coach. Now, some rather exciting news for Forest fans, as Forest have appointed a set-pieces coach after a poor set-piece return rate so far in this Premier League campaign. After a long period of no success with set-pieces, Nottingham Forest have hired a set-pieces coach from Brighton in the hope that the Reds can improve on the issue and create more goals in the process, and a necessity in the modern game, really. Simon Rusk, the former manager of Brighton and Hove Albion under-23 side, has officially started his new career at Nottingham Forest this week as set-pieces coach, amid calls from fans and the ownership to improve on set-pieces. In late November, reports from John Percy at The Telegraph revealed that Evangelos Marinakis was increasingly frustrated at the failure to sign a coach specialising in set-pieces. Forest have scored just one goal from a set-piece this season, with only Crystal Palace and Burnley joining them with the worst record this season for set-piece goals. And finally, an update on Omar Richards' injury situation. Now, since joining Nottingham Forest in the summer of last year, Omar Richards is yet to play a game of first-team football. An initial hairline fracture on his shin when arriving at the club, followed by a hernia and various other setbacks. Richards' start to his career at Forest has been tough, to say the least. Now on loan at Olympiacos, the English fullback is hoping to get his career back on track and fulfil his potential, with reports from Nikos Kotsis in Greece saying that there is a common belief at the Piraeus club that Richards' return to the first-team football is near. He has appeared for the Olympiacos B team in recent months, the only football he has really played since signing for Forest from Bayern Munich for around £10 million last summer. So that's the latest news from the 1865 news desk. I'm Jamie Martin. In the meantime, though, I'll be back soon. I'll be posting Forest news all through the week on @I'mJamieMartin on Twitter. Follow me there and I'll get more news to you as soon as I can. See you soon.
Thank you very much, Jamie, and we'll be hearing from you throughout the next few weeks and throughout the season. Now, we've got some top 5 stories there, so let's go through those one by one with Tom Newton and George Edwards. And let's start off with that first story. So Stevie Cooper has apparently been given a little bit more time. Tom, is it more time or is it a stay of execution?
Well, like I said after the Wolves game in the match report, we just need clarity on it now because we can't go doing this every single week if he gets to good results. So I'm not in the Steve Cooper in camp and I'm not in the out camp. I just want some clarity because it doesn't do anybody any favours. Because what about if he wins tomorrow night, then doesn't against Bournemouth next week? And I mean, it's one of those reverse, isn't it? Forest usually sometimes win the harder games and the easier games. So if it happens tomorrow that we beat Spurs, then he doesn't next week. Yeah, are we going to have this same conversation that we've had in the last couple of weeks or whatever? So yeah, just need some clarity now, and hopefully we just need a win more than anything, not for Steve Cooper, but for the whole club of where we are in the league, and hopefully kick on from there going over the Christmas period.
Difficult to disagree with that, Tom. George, I mean, we've discussed it on our podcast, and Married on the Midlands also went on TalkSport and said exactly the same thing to Max Rushton. It's just exhausting, isn't it, when every single week, if the result isn't right, then there's all this speculation about the gaffer's future, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's relentless, and it's been a feature of the club for years, hasn't it, with Forest really constantly going through managers, and whenever we seem to have a bad period of form, it's always the manager's under pressure. And I suppose that's modern football, that's Premier League football, with the spotlight that's on you, with everyone. You know, TalkSport didn't know we existed 2 years ago, and now whenever we lose a game, Steve Cooper could be sacked. Jim White was at Craven Cottage speaking to Steve Cooper after the game. And, you know, that's what comes with the Premier League. We've got to accept that. And as much as the fans are going to back Steve Cooper, I think the pressure that's been put on them to keep him in his job, really, it isn't really fair. And they're going to sing his name. They're going to keep getting behind him, as I think he's the right guy to do it. I think he deserves at least till the end of the season, because every season under Cooper we've exceeded expectations. And although it's not the best start, we're doing better than last season, and there's nothing to say that he can't carry on this. So I think we do need clarity, and Marinakis has provided that twice before by giving him a new contract last season and then coming out and backing him. So he's probably getting sick of keep having to do this, and, you know, him storming out against Fulham didn't help things. But I just hope that the club do have some clarity, and I hope it's not down to the players to get that clarity, because it always seems like Forest have got to just keep winning games for the questions to go.
Yeah, and thank you, George. And Tom, just to come back to you, at the Wolves match, I think one of the things that was noticeable was that there was a unity on the pitch and a level of mental performance as much as anything else that stood out compared to the previous few weeks. So is that something that you think will, again, buy the gaffer a little bit more time?
Yeah, yes and no, because all right, it was a good result in terms of it stopped the rot and everything, but at the same time, we need wins. And when you look at that team, what was picked last week, you players who you've spent quite a bit of money on. I know Gibbs-White played and everything, but Sangare never even got come onto the pitch. Origi didn't come on the pitch. Dominguez didn't, and sometimes you might have to rely on these players. And whether or not Steve Cooper's lost them in terms of they don't believe in him or whatever, it's going to be hard to turn that around, that relationship, if it is broken down with certain players. But it depends what team he puts out tomorrow, because first and foremost we need the win. But yeah, I think if he picks that team, what he picked against Wolves, I think it's just going to be a bit of a backs against the wall, and there's not really much attacking prowess on the field, is there, when you're looking for goals, and especially at home. We need to start winning games first and foremost.
And of course, it'll be tonight by the time that our listeners are hearing this. So, George.
I think Cooper has gone back really to what he trusts. I mean, you saw the lineup that he chose against Wolves. It was three new signings, and the subs that he brought on, all three players that came on were players from last season, and all the players that stayed on the bench are new players. So I think in adversity, he's often gone back to the back five, the systems that he trusts. And I mean, he's done it before in the Championship, going to the back five. It wasn't the sort of low block that we're used to, but against Fulham, when we beat them 1-0, it could be that. So he's always been that type of manager, and he's tried to sort of move away from that to make Forest more attractive and maybe win more games. But when the going gets tough, he's always gone back to this style and this system, and it does seem to work for him, especially at home against teams like Tottenham. You can realistically see Forest picking up a point there, like Tom mentioned a few minutes ago, as opposed to against Bournemouth, and that's what that style brings, I suppose. So he's gone back to basics, he's gone back to what he trusts, and maybe if Forest want to play a different style of football, to do that. But I think, like I say, he deserves the season to be able to show that he may be able to.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Let's talk about the next story that Jamie brought to us. So Evangelos Marinakis has resigned as the chairman of the Greek Super League. Now, depending upon your point of view, you could either say he's frustrated or maybe a bit mardy. What do you reckon, Tom Newton?
I honestly don't know what's happened over there. I mean, they've had trouble for years, haven't they, in Greece regarding the administration side of their FA and the league and everything, and then what's happened in neighbouring Turkey with the chairman punching the referee.
I was going to say, let's just remind ourselves that thus far, Marinakis nor any other Greek chairman have gone onto the pitch and punched an official, so could be worse.
But no, it's the football over that part of Europe's a bit murky at the moment, but I don't know what's actually kicked off, because it's always like these conspiracy theories regarding Olympiacos and Marinakis, which follow him around like wildfire over there. So yeah, I don't know too much why he's resigned and what's kicked off and why the football's got to be played behind closed doors until February. So George might, or the others might be a bit wiser than me of what's actually happened over there.
Well, George, firstly, I have no idea if you can shed any light on it. But secondly, do we think that this will have any bearing upon Marinakis' position at the City Ground, in terms of, is he more likely to sort of throw his weight behind Forest a little bit more? And does that mean that it will affect things, in Nottingham?
Well, firstly, there's not much I can shed light on, and this certainly isn't one of them. So, yeah, I mean, that's maybe just the figure of him with his beard and his quite imposing sense, but he does look a very angry figure quite a lot of the time. And even in that Palace away game, when we had that party at Palace, he was the sort of one that wasn't getting involved. And I suppose he's keeping his head down and looking for the future. So I hope he's just letting off steam over there. We're quite happy for him to fire Olympiacos managers, take our deadwood, and rip their league to shreds. So it quite possibly could be him letting off steam over there to maybe not do over here. So that's fingers crossed that he keeps that over there and doesn't bring it to Nottingham, because we don't need that toxicness around here.
Very diplomatic there, George. Okay, so that's 2 stories down and 3 to go. We'll be back in just a moment.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Hold up. I'm eating breakfast right now, and you need to hear about this. Have you ever tried Daily Harvest? My mind is literally blown. I'm enjoying a strawberry peach smoothie made with strawberries, peaches, goji berries, raspberries, and gluten-free oats. Wow. Just wow. It's a fruit explosion. I also got this oat bowl from Daily Harvest. So delicious. There's real fruit in here, and even some veggies. It's not freeze-dried or artificially flavored. Sorry, I just can't believe how delicious everything is. I want to start every morning like this. Daily Harvest meals are quick, nourishing, and so flippin' good. They're made of sustainably sourced fruits and veggies and delivered right to my door. You got to get in on this. Go to dailyharvest.com and enter promo code HARVEST for up to $65 off your first order. That's dailyharvest.com, promo code HARVEST for up to $65 off. Again, dailyharvest.com, promo code HARVEST for up to $65 off.
Tis the season for festive football, and what's the best way to watch it? Down at your local Green King Sports pub, of course. After all, Christmas is a time to catch up with friends old and new. So get down to your local for a refreshing pint, some delicious food, and live action of every Christmas cracker. Every fixture from TNT, Sky and Amazon is live at Green King Sports, which is wall-to-wall action on the giant HD screens, and you can watch every winning goal, top bins volley, and one of many dodgy VAR decisions that we will be seeing over the Christmas period. Download the Green King Sports app and you will receive 10% off drinks every single time there's sport on the telly. And what's more, you'll be supporting us here at 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. Now it's back to the Friday Top 5. Welcome back to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast, and our new show, the Friday Top 5. My name is Rich Ferraro, and I'm joined by Tom and George. And our third story that Jamie brought to us a little bit earlier was praise from Harry Toffolo, Cheikh Kouyate, and since recording, now Morgan Gibbs-White. And the phrases that all the players are using, they're talking about love and support. They're talking about how they want to play for Steve Cooper. And going back to what you said earlier, George, it's noticeable that Cooper went back to the nucleus of last season's squad as his tried and trusted lieutenants, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not a surprise that he did that, because last season we had that unity at the end of the season where we were just getting results and the City Ground was a place where everyone feared. And this season, as of yet, it hasn't been somewhere that anyone has feared. You look at the home games that we've had, I don't think we've really dominated one apart from Villa. I mean, I'd argue the Luton game as well, but that's been overshadowed by the two late Luton goals. And I was quite happy with that performance, and that's what I took away from that game. But understandably, there was frustration there. So, I mean, the interviews this week, they seem very sort of PR driven, but they're all got the same message. And you see that is coming from the dressing room. It's just how much of the dressing room is that coming from? And I'm not in a position to know whether he speaks for the whole dressing room, but it is notable that it was Kouyate, it's Gibbs-White, and it's Toffolo who are coming out, who aren't any of the new crop. The thing about those three players is, it's genuine, because you look at Toffolo, who was our last choice left back at the start of the season and has had to work so hard to play there, now taking corners, and now he looks like he's undroppable. And Kouyate, who's had one game, he might come off the bench in an earlier game, but really his first start, I'm pretty sure, against Wolves. And he's showing that same love. And I mean, I doubt he would have been approached for an interview, because, he's not one of the mainstay figures, and he probably didn't have to say that. So you do hope that is genuine, and it does seem like what the players have been saying is genuine. So if that translates onto the pitch, it'll be interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see how many of the new signings can weave their way back into the side with Cooper, because, I mean, based on that performance against Wolves, it wasn't outstanding, but apart from maybe Elanga, who I thought struggled to get into the game, I think if anyone gets dropped, they'll be felt hard done by.
Tom, I mean, is it down to the fact that those are the players who Cooper trusts and therefore they trust him? Or is it also down to the fact that some of the new signings, and just to use players like Dominguez and Sangare, we could maybe talk about Felipe and Murillo, some of those players don't speak very good English. So is that part of it as well?
I'd say so. And then you look at the players who have actually come out in the press with Toffolo, who's Cooper's liked and mentioned that last season. Got Morgan Gibbs-White's Steve Cooper's signing from last summer, who he wanted. So I think it's pretty much that, really. And Sangare and Dominguez are not really going to speak to the media because, like he says, English is not their first language and they might not be totally fluent, so they don't want to say something which might be misinterpreted. So I think it's a wise move that they haven't said anything, and you just want them to get back on a football field and actually let their football do the talking rather than like some hollow words in the press.
And just going back to what George was saying and what we discussed a bit earlier as well, I mean, with the players like Dominguez, Sangare, one or two others, I mean, we could say Montiel, he seems to have dropped down the pecking order and so on. Is there also something whereby the players who aren't used to the Premier League, but they have played at high levels in other leagues around the world, and is there something to be said for the fact that the Premier League is a tough league to join? It's an even harder league to join when the team's not doing well. And maybe that's why they have fallen out of contention just in the last, when the pressure's on. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, and I think some other factors with that is that the players will come over on like deadline day or whatever, and probably for so many weeks or months, they might have to stay in a hotel and like then things aren't going well for you. You're like looking around and thinking, Christ, have I made the right move to come to England? So there's all those other factors where as a football fan will just automatically think, oh, because they're being paid like 50 grand, 60 grand a week, whatever, they can just like walk into a football club and excel. And it doesn't work like that, because at the end of the day, they're still humans. They're still, if you take me, for example, and go and put me in Spain like tomorrow, I won't be able to adapt. I won't be able to do the job to the best of my ability because I'll be unsettled. And these players like do it quite often, if you know what I mean, when they go from like club to club after their contracts, or whatever, or within the contract where it's like they only spend like 2 years. So I think you've got to put those factors into it as well. It's not just a matter of like kicking football around for 90 to 100 minutes. It's the cultural factors as well, and the language and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, George?
And I think it's the sheer volume of new players that we've had. I mean, that lineup against Fulham, I noted that the only player that was there 2 years ago in our promotion season was Ryan Yates. So apart from that, everyone has been in the door for the past 2 years. So maybe if you get one or two new signings, then it's quite easy to bed them in. But when you've got half the team that are new to the system, new to the city, new to the league, then they're always going to take a while to adapt. And Dominguez, Sangare, Mangala, that seemed to work for a while, but I think it was always going to be found out, because you can't expect these players to come in and hit the ground running straight away and build up a consistent run of form. So it's an unsurprising issue that Forest have got, and I'm not surprised that we've gone back to basics, really.
Yeah, and I would just to add my two penneth on that. I mean, we saw Dominguez look really dynamic in his first few games, and then he's dropped off. And I think that's maybe down to that kind of, it's almost like the adrenaline factor wears off, especially when results are going against. Sangare, he sort of started a bit slowly. He started making telling contributions. The stats prove it. But then again, he looked absolutely lost in the last couple of matches. So again, maybe there's that element whereby kind of the reality catches up a little bit. But let's move on. George, you mentioned earlier about Toff now taking more set pieces, and especially when Morgan was dropped for a game, we saw Toff as the main set piece supremo, and we've appointed a set piece coach who was previously at Brighton. So Simon Rusk, this is something that Evangelos Marinakis had publicly said that he wanted, according to John Percy. Is this a good move, George?
I think so. I think it's something that's been coming because, I mean, as a Premier League side that we are now, we were thrust into that and we didn't have any dynamic, any setup of a Premier League club. So our priority coming up was to sign players, to sign people that are going to keep us in this league. And then things like a set piece coach maybe aren't in the forefront of your mind. But now that issue has really been prevalent this season, and it's what all the established Premier League clubs have. So it's not a surprise that Forest have done that. I mean, I saw something on Twitter today. I mean, it's Twitter. Who knows how reliable it's going to be? But there was this sort of chart, and there was an x-axis where it was goals scored from set pieces and a y for goals conceded, and Forest were high up on the y and barely on the x. So it's an issue that has been stark all season. And as a team like we are, we don't create that many chances. We're not going to create 15, 20 chances a game. So when we get these opportunities, we've got to start taking them going forward. I think this season we've only scored from volley, from that free kick at Man United, from what I can remember, when it, and even then it hit his face and went in. It's not like he headed it in. So that was quite a lucky one, to be fair. So we've got to get better at that. And then defensively, I mean, against Fulham and Wolves, maybe we haven't conceded from set pieces, but there was a run of games where we were just getting absolutely pelted and conceding every time. And you look at teams like Luton, like Brentford, who have made set pieces through a reason that they're in this league and fighting, because they work so hard to get those opportunities, put a perfect ball in. I mean, their Alfie Dowd, their left backs, at one stage had created the most chances of any player in the league for Luton. So I think it's something that teams do, and we haven't done enough. The delivery, like I say, is a big factor with Toffolo. Hopefully we've got that. The one reservation that I do have is the fact that I've looked into him slightly, and I've not seen that he's sort of got a specific set piece background. He's more sort of a general coach. So hopefully that'll come, and hopefully he does specialise in that. But I think it's a move that was always going to come, and it's about time that Forest did that.
And Tom, one of the things that I would say, and actually George and I discussed this after the West Ham match, is that defending is something you have to do as a team. So it's not just about saying, well, we need to be better at delivering the ball into the box, because you score as a team, you concede as a team. So it's not, yes, the delivery needs to improve in offensive situations, but the players need to be moving and shaping in the right way. And then defending, one of the things that I've noticed, yes, there were matches like West Ham where we just didn't defend properly. But the other thing that I've noticed this season in particular is that all too often, defending the first ball hasn't been too much of a problem, but defending the second ball, we're always second best. We're always second to that second ball in what should be a situation where Forest should be shaping to get rid. So in that sense, it seems a bit of a no-brainer, doesn't it, Tom?
Yeah, and I've noticed as well that on some set pieces, there might be somebody who's like, you're the one who's made the first contact. Like, I know he hasn't been playing recently, but whoa, you go and make the first contact, but it seems nobody knows who's going to make the first contact. So they get drawn to the ball. Then next minute you're leaving somebody on back post or whatever, and then, like you say, don't get the second ball. So it's a long time coming, isn't it? Of this set piece, we knew it was a problem at times last season, and hopefully this will stop the rot in terms of the goals conceded from set pieces, and hopefully on the training pitch, and we can conjure up something, because I can't remember the last time we actually scored direct from a free kick. It's got to be. I think, looking back, I think the last time we scored, I don't think it actually went in direct. It was James Garner against Stoke on that 2-2 when he hit the bar. And I think that was the last one.
Didn't Lingard score away at Blackburn last season from a free kick?
Double deflection. I think that's being generous to say it's his goal.
We've got to be generous to the situation we're in, though, aren't we?
That's true. If there's any straws to be clutched at, we'll go for that. And Tom, I'm just going to stay with you because you mentioned about training ground there, and this brings us to our final story. I think we can do this one quite briefly. Omar Richards, he's out on loan. He's barely kicked a ball for a year and a half, and he's back in training. Do you think we'll ever see him in a Forest shirt again? Or full stop, do you think we'll ever see him in a Forest shirt?
If he gets a good loan spell under his belt at Olympiacos, yes, because we haven't got a lot of... I know Einer's come in and he started well and his form's dropped off, and Toffolo seems to be the absolute shoe-in at the moment because there's nobody else really on any decent form. So it'd be nice for him to get a decent loan spell under his belt, come to Forest, because if you remember, we have spent quite a lot of money on him, 10 million quid, and with FFP and everything, you don't want to be signing players for 10 million quid and never playing, and then you're not going to get a resale value or whatever, because obviously of how many, he hasn't played as many games as he would like in the last couple of years. So yeah, I'd like him to come back and hopefully hit the ground running, and hopefully one day we'll see him in a Forest shirt and see if he actually does exist.
And George, I mean, all I'd say is that of all the signings we made that summer, he was one I was quite excited about, because he was, somebody who had real strong potential, went to Bayern Munich and created a positive impression. And the fact he lost his place there wasn't necessarily down to his own personal form. It was down to changes in tactics, changes in management and so on. So he's a bit of a victim of the situation there, but a player with massive potential. And, just from a human angle, it's an absolute crying shame if his career is over down to, freak injuries.
Yeah, it would be, because he was such a promising player. I remember when he was at Reading, they had two brilliant fullbacks, and he was one of them. He was fantastic, and he was either going to get a move to
the other one being Chris Gunter, yeah?
Okay, maybe not that far back. I'm too young to even have seen Chris Gunter play for Forest, so
No. Well, there
Sorry.
you go. Well, but we spent the Gunter money on Omar Richards, and then it's not worked out.
Yeah, and he was brought in, I think, both seasons with the intention to be number one, because last season we signed him and then Toffolo, but I think he was going to be the number one. Then he got injured, and we signed Lodi on loan. And then this season, if you look, we'd signed Aina, who was sort of a right and left fullback, and then Toffolo as well. So there was a hope that he'd come back. There was a few pictures of him in training. We realised that he did exist, like you say, and then he disappeared again, and we had to bring in Tavares, which ultimately hasn't worked out either. So I do hope that he can put his injuries past him, because he looked like a fantastic player before he came here, and we've probably spent close to 20 million now on all the planes and all the treatment on him. So let's hope we finally get some money back for that.
And speaking of forgotten left-backs, I'd more or less forgotten about Nuno Tavares, so thank you for reminding me. That brings us to the end of our very first Friday Top 5. So thank you very much, listener, for joining us. Thank you to Tom Newton, to George Edwards, and of course, thank you to our newshound, Jamie Martin. And of course, we will be back with our match reports. We shall be recording that tomorrow morning, so we'll have a chance to sleep on tonight's Spurs match, and we will be talking about the match, win, lose or draw. Hopefully, we'll be able to get a good result back at the City Ground, and I'm really hoping for a cracking atmosphere and get behind the lads, get behind the gaffer. We'll be back in your feed very, very shortly. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Podcast Network.
Looking for a fun way to win 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/play100 and use code play100. That's code play100 at prizepicks.com/play100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.